welcome back, everybody. It's time to ride along on the Pedego Podcast as we follow the e-bike entrepreneurs driving this whole thing and talk to some of the amazing people who are just riding along. And one of them leading the pack today here, heck, he's been around the world, at least in his mind. We're going to find out more what that means with our return guest, one of our return guests back again here, Richard Davis. Welcome, sir.
Good to be here.
You're a Pedego owner. You bought
Yes.
your bike when? How long ago?
March 29th of 2018.
Before the pandemic. And you started riding, if I remember the last journey correctly. And at some point you went, man, I put a lot of miles on this bike. In fact, you're an engineer and you start calculating, if I'd taken this physically around the world and not just repeatedly around my neighborhood here in Panama City, Florida, where would I be? Is that sort of the evolution of this?
Yeah, it all started when I hit the second odometer rollover.
Which turns over when? I don't know when it turns over. 100?
Well, that's a surprise, too. The thing is calibrated in kilometers.
Okay.
So it rolls over when you go from 99.9 kilometers to 10,000.
Okay.
Which turns out to be 6,209.9 to 6,210.
I knew that, but I didn't want to show off. Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's right.
How many kilometers turn into miles? All right.
Well, I didn't know that the first time, and when it rolled over the first time, it was Easter Sunday. I thought I broke the thing because the odometer just suddenly randomly turned over to zero.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what did I do?
Yeah. So that makes sense. Odometers turn over on a car, on a bike, whatever. There's some point that they start over. They don't just add up forever into the millions and zillions here. So at a point they start over again. And so you had yours go over, and that made you think, well, how many miles did I ride? And then but where was the imaginative jump from, boy, I've ridden this bike a lot, to kind of like riding around the world? When did you start investigating this idea?
Well, at the second rollover, again, if you take that 6,200 miles and double it, the 12,000 and some odd, and
Right.
the circumference of the Earth is about 24,800, depending on whose source you believe.
Right. And how did you know that? Because give us your background. You have some sort of engineering background.
I'm a recovering engineer, so I like numbers. I'm a numbers geek.
Yeah, exactly. So only you would think, that's like, that kind of sounds like halfway around the world, and let me figure this out and do it. So that's cute. That's interesting. Tells you rode a lot of miles. You really like your bike. Mm-hmm. But when did you start creating this? I'm going to treat it as if I am riding around the world. And I rode 20 miles today. Where does that take me next? And you start plotting a journey, the fastest way to go around the world. Talk about all that. This turned into almost kind of a fantasy ride.
Yeah, so when you start talking about halfway around the world from where I am, that longitude, if you go halfway around the world, ends up, if you're near the equator, at a place called Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh.
That's bizarre enough, okay. But you could figure this out and find that little spot, and it had that kind of name to it. I had literally been doing this on a straight line around the Earth on this latitude. Is it latitude or longitude? I always forget which one. One's up and down and one's...
Longitude gets you all the way around. Latitude gets you from equator to pole.
Top to bottom, okay. All right, so you start thinking to yourself, if I had really been doing this in a straight line away from my home, where would this have put me? And it turned out to be, what? Cox's Bazar? That's pretty bizarre.
Yeah, and supposedly, I don't know who calculates these things, but supposedly that is the longest beach in the world.
Oh, so you start investigating. What does this place look like? What am I seeing in my mind here?
Wikipedia had a thing on them and the whole bit. Yeah. Funny.
Now, folks, you got to understand, this guy takes us now way to a level most of us would have never approached here. You create a spreadsheet. I've seen the spreadsheet. You sent it to us, the last one, and it's got columns and stuff here and of data that you're collecting now as you start imagining, where would I be? Where in the world is Waldo, like that kid's game? Where in the world is Richard right now here? Every day you enter in the log and then figure out where you'd be. Were you on this journey for real, right?
Yeah, and starting in Bangladesh, I had an east route and a west route. So basically, if you're halfway around the world, it doesn't matter which way you turn to get back. You just have to go halfway around the world.
Yeah, right.
So
you either come back or you keep going, right? Yeah.
And a lot of that's the Pacific Ocean, so there's just not a whole lot of good landmarks there when you're out over the ocean.
Right, exactly.
So I wanted a east and a west route so that I could, have something interesting to talk about or think about as I made the way around.
Have you ever been around the world?
No.
I myself am an armchair traveler, so that's why this caught my imagination. I've been around the world in my mind. I've read a million articles. I subscribe to all the travel magazines, but I've been out of the country once or twice, and once of those was to Mexico or Canada. It wasn't too far.
Well, and at the time, everything was locked down because of the pandemic.
Yes, right.
So if you can't go around physically, maybe you can get around the world virtually.
Yeah,
so
right. I think that's part of the appeal to this virtual. We're all in virtual lockdown. You and I are talking through Zoom today here. We're all virtually connecting with each other. Why not turn this into a virtual journey around the world? And don't just randomly say what it would be like to go somewhere. Let's relate it to something you're actually doing. Talk about your routine of riding this bike. How often, how far did you ride this bike?
So I try to get out daily. What happened is I don't like to run out of battery and have a long ride home. So basically, I set up my round trips to where I'd go halfway through the battery and then hit home and hopefully have enough in reserve to get me there.
Right.
And so longer and longer range and getting more and more miles on. And then as I started sending those mileage reports, the thing was I was reading about e-bikes on Reddit and several other places.
Yeah.
And what I was getting was a lot of people that like to work on e-bikes.
Yeah.
But the fun of this thing is to ride it.
Talking about people who love the gearheads, right? Let's do this and let's fine tune this and let's fix this. And you're like, that's fine. But let's talk about the fun of riding it. Where are we going with this? Right?
Exactly. And so just to keep focused and, if you set a goal like getting around the world, you better have some signposts along the way to make sure you're on track or have a schedule or something to keep after it.
Do you need an accountability partner? We all have dreams. I'm going to lose weight this year. I'm going to take a trip this year. And then, nothing. Something comes up. I'm too busy next year.
Well, sending those mileage reports out kind of makes it real.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could have done this just and logged it and so forth. But when you start getting a bunch of eyeballs tracking what you're doing, you pay a little more attention to it. The other thing I did was these trend lines on the chart. We talked about that the last time, but basically on the graph, there's a series of timelines that say if you get X number of miles per day, on average, you'll finish by such and such a date.
Yeah, right.
So I had multiple dates, each 4 months apart. So those gave me trend lines. And what I wanted to do was stay at the two most aggressive trend lines so that I kept my progress between end of August 2022 and the end of December 2022.
Which is why you're on this show at the end of August in 2022, because you were on about, I want to say, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, I forgot exactly when. And you were projecting, if I stay at this pace, if I keep riding this many miles a day, somewhere in this kind of time frame, because some days I'll be sick or some days it'll be rainy, or I can't predict I can do this at that same pace every single day. But if I stay on some pace, somewhere within this window of time, and we kiddingly said, well, come on back. We'll have you come on the show. We're thinking he'll quit long before that. We'll never hear from this guy again. But you didn't. You kept riding. And then you're sending us emails and accounts and everything. Suddenly I'm buying into this. This guy's riding around the world. He's really tracking a worldwide journey. Where is he at now? What's he seeing now? What's he going? Wait a minute. He's in Panama, Florida. He's just riding this bike a lot every day. But he's turned it into this imaginative journey around the world. This many miles equates to this kind of journey. Did other people get that connection, or did they just say, Richard, this is a little weird here. Come on.
Mostly that.
Come on, Richard. Come back to earth here. Well, it caught my imagination big time. I know others listening to this show, because you start thinking, it starts turning it into something more visual. If I'm riding around the neighborhood over and over and over and over again, it feels good, and I like being out, and I like doing it. But if it becomes part of an imaginative journey, wow, then it becomes a goal, and it becomes more interesting. And when the ride is over, it's not over. You got to go do the research. Where did I end up with, right?
It really started to get real once I hit the California coast.
Which he didn't really do, folks. He's just doing this in his mind. But go ahead.
But going around on that side and hitting the California coast, then it says, okay, now I need some more U.S. mileposts because
Yeah.
we're largely a U.S.-based community with Pedego fans.
I don't even know if they have any international dealers. Don will have to correct us, or Carly will, but I know they've got a couple hundred dealers, and I think they're all basically here North American.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I never asked you this before. So there are Pedego dealers scattered across the country. Did you shoot for any cities that had a store? And did you then send the guy in Boulder, Colorado? Did you say, hey, I'm passing by your store? And she's like, where? I don't see you. No. It's a fantasy tour. It's a virtual tour here. So, yes, Pedego is based here in Southern California.
And then when I got to the point that was the same longitude as the corporate office, I said, well, okay, now let's look at a bike path on Google Maps that will take me all the way from there to store in Santa Rosa Beach here for Pedego 30A.
Yes, there would be. There must be some way to get from point A to point B in the United States here.
In fact, when I bought the bike, that was their only store, and they are opening their third and fourth here shortly. So, So I bought the bike 3 stores ago.
3 stores ago. Well, 3 continents ago here.
Yeah.
I understand the dealers have embraced this. So you completed this milestone journey. How many miles would it take to go around the Earth?
24,860 something.
And you've now ridden 24,860 something miles and then some on your Pedego bike.
Yeah, actually, I've hit another 250 miles since we did that, so I'm over 25,000 now.
Wow. So you've reached this milestone, and when you did, the dealers made kind of a deal out of it. They made a big deal out of it. What happened?
Yeah, actually, it started before then because Don actually comped me a battery. That got me to 2 full round-trip rides a day. And so I was really able to start racking up the miles with the second battery.
I wonder why you were accelerating. We thought you wouldn't be on until December, if we'd ever hear from you again, if you were really going to finish this audacious journey, which you did. So now I understand how you got there faster. You had a little boost from Pedego. Don chipped in and gave you a battery. Good for him.
Ride one and charge the other and just keep going.
Yeah, right. All right, so what other things happened when you reached the milestone? Did they make it some kind of event? Did you cross a virtual barrier? Did they come out and people cheer you on? Or tell us about the end leg of the journey, and then we'll talk.
Sure, we worked
we'll go backwards.
Into the normal Pedego Owners Group ride that they have there at the store.
Okay.
And they do a monthly ride and set a route. And this time what we did is gathered out back and talked a little bit about what I was doing, what the numbers were, when we were going to pull off the road and stop and celebrate the milestone and so forth. And so we took a short ride, pulled off the road into the neighborhood, gathered, and said yeehaw.
Yeehaw. And people are yelling yeehaw, and everybody said, what are they celebrating about? The guy just rode around the world.
Yeah. And what's funny about well over 99% of the miles were all in Bay County, Florida. So it was just me riding locally. But
in your mind, you were traveling. You realized you were going far enough to go around the world, and you started fantasizing, what would that really look like? Where would that really place me? What would I see along the way? So what did you see? What did you virtually see along the way? What did you learn about? Because you had to research now. Okay, I add another 67 miles. Where does that put me now? I don't think you probably were that well versed at all the points around the Earth, but you're probably more versed now. What did you learn about this great blue planet here as you're virtually traveling around it?
Well, shortly after we did the first podcast, I read about a guy that actually did a legitimate around the world e-bike journey.
Yes, he came to
a total of 27,000 miles because the way you have to follow the land masses to get to where you've got crossable points and so forth. Yeah, apparently this guy made it around the world.
Don told me about this guy. I don't know why we've never had him on the show. We'll have to ask Carly if we're still in contact. This was a couple of years ago, I think he did this. And he sort of appeared out of nowhere like you did and said, hey, I'm doing this. And everybody got really excited to hear about it. I may have the story wrong, but I think he was diagnosed with like deadly cancer or something. Something motivated him to get out and do this. You just started doing it, and then you realized, hey, this is a lot of miles. What does a lot of miles look like if I really went out in the world? Wow, I'm here, I'm there. So as you're researching this world, did you come up with any interesting points or ideas or bits of information? How long, how far, How did you fall in love with something along the way? Hey, this sounds intriguing or something. The more I read about it, the more I'm interested in this.
Yeah, there's always places that you want to visit. And then when I was going across the Pacific, all these places that you heard about for the big World War II naval battles.
Midway or something.
Yeah, Okinawa, all those were steps along the way. And I guess they're all spaced about, what an aircraft carrier or a naval group could reach, island to island.
Makes sense, as they were island hopping. Yeah, they were trying to push the Japanese back, and they had this campaign. I'm a big World War II buff, of island hopping. So yeah, that makes sense. They could only sail so far, and that's where we're going to have the next big battle. Interesting.
Now, the funny local thing that I learned and discovered was when you think about the history of cars and bicycles coexisting, working and playing together, there's about 100 years of history of cars go fast and bikes go slow.
Yeah, right.
And everybody, quote unquote, knows how fast a bicycle goes. The e-bike changes that.
Not just how fast it goes, but how far it goes. Other than people who push themselves, ultra marathons, they ride 100-mile rides and all this kind of stuff. Most of us can only go so far because our legs and our body give out.
This is my safety tip. When people pass me in a vehicle to make a right turn in front of me, they continually misjudge how quickly I can go in that bike lane. And I've had to, brake very hard for people making surprise right turns in front of me.
As you put in one of your posts, e-bikes are going faster and they're going farther. They're changing our perceptions here.
Yeah, the other cool thing the e-bike does is advertising of nearly everything is about trying to appeal to the sense of nostalgia and wouldn't it be great to be young again and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And everything from cosmetics and skinny jeans to diet pills to whatever have you. It's trying to get you back where you were.
Back home.
I couldn't ride a bicycle 60 miles when I was in my 20s.
No, or when you were 12.
Exactly. But I can do that. So this has greatly increased my ability and my range on a bicycle.
So you're not just trying to recreate something you lost or forgot about or trying to regain your youth. You've acquired a new tool you never could have done before. Farther, faster. Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. I never thought about that because, yes, bikes in particular have a nostalgia. Even some of the bike designs, they're bike cruisers. They look like the old Schwinn banana seat bikes. They're all trying to recreate something for the most part. You're saying, don't recreate. We are creating something brand new, a new type of relationship, a new type of exercise, a new type of, I don't know, what do you call it, a vehicle? What is it? What is this new e-bike? What would you call it? You're the engineer.
An experience.
An experience. All right. Well, that says it better than anything I could come up with because you took us on an experience I never thought I could understand. You took us on the experience of physically riding that many miles, staying committed to it day after day, and then turning that into a theater of the mind, an experience that we could somehow grab onto. And it became real to me. As you sent these journeys, I'm like really cheering you on, like you're really going around the world. I can't explain it, but it became very real to me.
It kept me on track for sure.
Yeah. How long did it take you to do this? From start to finish? Because at first you weren't on a journey, you're just riding a bike. And then when you finally said, maybe this is a journey, maybe it's something I've got to do. A journey means that you've got a destination in mind too.
Yeah, and the miles kept cranking up. As I went through and looked at my odometer turns, it took me 773 days to get the first rollover, 383 days to get the second one, 266 to get the third one, and 178 to get the fourth one. And so starting out, it was about 8 miles a day. And for the fourth rollover, I averaged 34.9 miles per day on that.
Now, I can play amateur psychologist and guess, but you tell me, why do you think your pace picked up?
You have a goal.
That's what I was going to say.
You get motivated to achieve the goal.
Right.
And then the big thing on the fourth rollover was that second battery. I just blew things out of the water when I could make 2 rides, and I wasn't waiting for the battery to charge to get the full second ride in.
So takeaways. One, everybody get a second battery if you really want to be audacious, ambitious, and go far. What are the takeaways? What did you learn? What are the things did you learn about the bike, about yourself, about the journey?
The bike is a beast. I mean, it is just insanely reliable, and it's been good. The other thing is, to get that far, you're going to have things break. Yeah. And you're going to have service. Yeah. And it is just nice to know that you could take it into a Pedego shop and get it serviced, and people there know what they're doing, they know the product, and they can get you back on the road. I
was going to say, you were an engineer, and these things are engineered really well, but I wonder, I don't think anybody would ever admit this, but I wonder how long they thought these things would last. What did they engineer them to do? Were they engineered to ride a couple miles once a week, or to ride 50 miles a day? What level of endurance did they build into these products? Apparently they built in a lot more than they probably even ever planned. They probably didn't think people are going to ride them 24,000 miles.
And even if you're not, isn't it nice to know that they're capable of it? They're
capable of doing that. You certainly proved that's a big point in itself here. What model do you have? Everybody's going to ask me here.
It's a City Commuter Black.
So that one seems like a durable bike, but that's not the fat tire mountain bike that's built for high endurance and long rides particularly. It's meant to be a city commuter.
This is the ideal commute to work, city streets kind of a bike. You sit upright and you're high enough you can see traffic and you can keep up and all that good stuff. But it is not a let's go shred some trails kind of
an extreme adventure kind of bike. So even that, it certainly seems like you pushed it farther than probably the original engineers engineered it for or imagined anybody to do with it here. All right, so I'm wondering, we got to celebrate this somehow. Don, if you're listening, we need a 10,000-mile pin. Maybe a little contest. Maybe we could do this as a crowdsource thing, have the community of Pedego owners groups around the country. Somebody creates a designing pin, and then you just get some made. And the first one is awarded to our first round-the-world rider, but I'll bet you won't be the first. I'll bet there'll be more now here.
Well, what was interesting is on the ride where I actually hit that, I was talking to one of the Pedego ambassadors that was on the ride with us, and she said that she has had multiple bikes, but her total miles on those, she's up to around 17,000 miles.
Wow,
so
see?
These folks are out there, yeah.
Yeah. Would you proudly wear this pin to everybody? And everybody's like, wow, he's got a 10,000-mile pin. I recognize that. Or a 50,000-mile pin or a 20,000-mile pin. Who knows what pins? There could be different levels here. But something that you wear on like your jacket or your hat when you go riding around your bike, I guess.
Absolutely. And put that on the corporate Facebook page. When you start seeing, hey, wait a minute, I think I've got a lot of miles and I'm here in town XYZ, but all of a sudden you've got a worldwide group there and you find out, wait a minute, I've got some catching up to do. Yeah. That'll keep people motivated. The other thing it does is when you're getting these kind of miles, what you're doing also is people are posting, hey, I've got 10, I've got 15, I got 20,000 miles. All of a sudden, that's a good story to tell and share with existing owners about why they don't want to stray when they go get their next bike.
All of that and more. And if nothing else, it motivates me. If you did 10, then I'm going to do 15. Or if he did it, I can do it. Or, wow, I never thought about doing that. Just like you actually picked up your pace. You actually started riding farther because it set some goals and some milestones. So if we created some of those milestones and we celebrate those milestones, I think you'd have more people reaching for them and more people achieving them.
The e-bike amplifies your ability to explore.
Wow. Well, that says it all.
You can go further. You can, your range is better, and you can just see more things.
Well, I'm going to leave it there. I can't improve upon that. But you're amplifying the experience. You're amplifying your ability to explore. Wow, that should be a slogan somewhere here. Good stuff. Thank you so much for what an amazing journey. I think it's the craziest story I've ever heard, and yet it's crazy. I can't get it out of my mind, and I've told so many people about it here. So clearly you've captured the zit guy? That feeling of the moment here. Feeling of the moment is people are pent up. They want to get out. They want to get going again in the world here, and you showed through this imaginative use of the bike, this imaginative journey that you set on, what's possible, how far you can push yourself in these things. Really, it's an amazing story. Thanks so much for sharing it with us.
Paul, good to be here.
All right, and where do they go see if they want to see you? Got pictures? We'll put some in here, but I think there's pictures and other things. What, the Pedego Owners Group in Florida has some of this on, or is there a main
There
thing?
is a corporate Facebook site where there are some photos, and then Pedego 30A also has a photograph page.
That's the store down there because it's near, 30A must mean some road I forgot or something.
Yes, you've got a Route 98 that runs along the coast, and then anywhere the coast runs out away from the road, they have these little side roads that take you to the beach waterfront areas.
Little feeders.
30A is one of those that runs through Walton County.
Oh, cool. Okay. All right. Well, 2 places to go check it out. Or the challenge. You've thrown down the challenge. I guess I got to ask you the last question. Where do you go next? Everybody, that's the question I should have asked in the beginning. Where do you go next? And we'll end with that.
So the first thing I'm going to do is ride fewer miles.
You don't need to be on this frenetic pace anymore here.
So even if I'm getting fewer miles, I can still do more exploring.
Yes.
So how do I get to know that I'm doing more exploring and seeing new things?
How do you turn it into another fantasy? What's the next image here? Is it
Well, Paul, you know me, another spreadsheet.
Yeah. All right, let's leave it there, and we'll have you come back again when you've launched on another journey and told about your next one.
I'll have a story for you, and I'll keep sending emails.
All right, we appreciate it. Thanks so much for joining us here on this week's Pedego Podcast as we track the amazing journeys of people on these bikes, where it's taken them, physically, mentally, for fun. Come back and join us on the Pedego Podcast, brought to you by Pedego.com.